You guys got my head going. I love that. If the Spirit of God is not here tonight, I'm not here. I want to tell you something. I speak for an organization called R.E.A.C.T America, and the acronym for the word REACT is Real Events as Classroom Teaching. My story, oh boy, it's never happened before in history. Probably will never happen again. I was all over the news in 1990. And if I get a little emotional, you guys bear with me.
Come on.
I'm serious. I'm here because of Christ. Woo! Oh man, you don't know. You don't know. I've lost everything. I lost my brother. I was shot up in a gunfight. When I was younger, I was raised to be evil, to be mean. I was raised around drugs, crime, sex, all the above. And I ended up doing drugs, getting into it all, going to prison. I've been in prison over 20 years. You might see somebody right now that's well-groomed in a suit. What you don't see underneath this suit is tattoos covered my body of evil things, evil times, depicting evil places and times in my life. What you don't see is track marks from drugs. What you don't see is stab wounds from fights, bullet holes, and surgeries from that kind of stuff. I robbed a bank. I robbed 2 banks. I robbed 3 banks. I robbed a police station and took every gun they had in the place. Yeah, and we'll show you. I went to prison. I got out of prison after serving my time. I escaped from a prison and then did more time for that. I got out of prison. I went to prison and made mob ties in there. I started robbing drug dealers for drugs and money when I got out of prison. The closest thing to me was my younger brother. When he seen me a week after prison come home with $16,000 and 7 ounces of cocaine, he wanted in it too. So I brought him into it too. Then one day, in a gunfight, he gets shot with a MAC-10 and paralyzed from the neck down. He's dead now. And I get shot up and screwed back together, and I wake up after doing almost 20 years in prison. I wake up facing over 6 lives in prison in one county. One newspaper article said 666 years. Isn't them 6 is something? Another one said 6 lives and 66 years is what I'm facing. I went back into prison. My brother's dying. He stayed alive for a while, but he's dying. I'm back into prison, and here I'm facing the rest of my life again. Everything I've touched has turned to crap, literally, all my life. Amen. I laid there. I went out on the yard one day, and don't believe there's not drugs in there, because there is. Went out on the yard one day, and I got me 30 sets of T's and Blues. I went in, crushed them up, cooked them down, drew them up in a 3C syringe, and I thought, you know what? They're not going to get me. And that's what I kept telling all my friends on the yard. They're not going to get me. They're not going to take me down like this. I accept it. My life's over. It's ruined. I've ruined everything I've touched. I'm gonna get me. They're not going to get me. A friend of mine walked into my cell that night, and it was right before count time, and said, "Don, I know what you're thinking of." And I said, "Yeah, Glenn, yeah. Enough's enough." And I was about ready to do the shot of dope. They called count time, and he just said, "Man, please don't do that. Please don't do that. Please don't do it." I said, "There was no hope. I'm facing life sentences in a couple counties, and there's no hope. I'm done." Well, I thought about his talk when he left. And for the first time in my life, I laid back on my bunk in that cell and cried like a baby. And I said, at first I blamed God. God, if you're really real, why in the would you do this to me? Why would you do this to me? I said, if you're really real, take me away. And what I meant is let me go. Let me die. Let me go. Take me away from this. Well, he did. I didn't do that shot of dope that night. The next morning, I went to the hole. I was taken. My life was so out of control and so crazy that I couldn't even handle an environment like a prison with walls and fences around. I had to be put into an 8x8 cell by myself with nothing to keep me from killing myself or destroying anything else any further. When I laid in there, the only thing that was in there was a little Bible. I picked it up. I had nothing else to do. I started reading it. And scriptures still stick in my mind that I read. What you sow, so shall you reap. Well, I sure sowed a lot, and here it comes. When you turn your life over to Christ, come on, all things turn around. Jesus. Oh, yeah. I thought, how can that be real? After everything I've done, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. We've killed people. We've destroyed lives. We've taken everything in the world from everyone. How can that be real? How can you turn those bad things around to be good? Come on. All right. Then a guard walks by my cell, and I'm really pondering on this. How in the world does this work? How can that possibly be true? A guard walked by my cell and said, I noticed you don't have anything in there. Here's a book. He slid a book underneath my door. I picked it up and looked at it, and I'll never forget it. It was called Hooked by R.E.A.C.T. Houghton. He now speaks for the Full Gospel Businessmen's Fellowship. Yes. I read it, and his life was almost like mine. This is God answering my questions. Yes, sir. His life was almost exactly like mine. A bank robber, shot, went to prison in Canada. And the reason they call it Hooked is because this guy, when he got in prison, was making fly hooks in prison and selling them to a sports shop owner right out in a local town who were swearing by his hooks. All the fishermen loved his hooks. So this guy was coming there, and it's the only little form of income Mr. Houghton had, was selling his hooks to this local shop. And this guy was a Christian, and he kept preaching Christ to Mr. Houghton every time he come to church. And R.E.A.C.T. Houghton said, yeah, okay, yeah, fine, yeah, whatever. Here, take my hooks, give me some money. You know, he was just doing it to, yeah, buy my hooks, buy my hooks. So, finally, this guy finally got through to R.E.A.C.T. Houghton. He ended up turning his life over to Christ. When he did, the world opened up for him. And you know that to this day, and it's in the book if you ever see it, to this day, they finally come to R.E.A.C.T. Houghton one day, released him from prison 2 years early, and they still today have not found the proper process or paperwork that called for his release.
Glory to God.
And he's free.
Yeah.
Now, this is true. This is the book. And I read it. That night when I went to sleep, I had a dream. And usually when I have a dream the next morning, I forget it. You know, I might remember it instantaneously, but then it's forgotten. The next morning, I remembered it, and it was vivid in color and everything. I was speaking to people. I don't know where or who. And they were crying. And I thought, God wants to use this message. Is that what he means by turning bad things around to do good? He wants to use what I've been through and what's happened to maybe help other people. But how's it going to work? I'm facing 666 years in prison. And as I read all these scriptures and read it more, faith, according to your faith, so be it unto you. And just all this stuff kept happening. My mom comes up and sees me, and I'm telling you, I dropped to my knees and cried and prayed to him and said, please, please take away this misery. Take away what's happened on my life and help. did he?
Yeah, glory, hallelujah.
That's my Jesus.
My God.
That's my Jesus right there.
My mom comes up and sees me in prison. And I said, Mom, she's just, I mean, the day that this happened with the shooting and all that, we put her through hell. But the day that this stuff happened with the shooting and me and my brother got all shot up, my mom had a nervous breakdown and had to be admitted to the hospital herself and was disabled from psychological conditions after we ruined her life and ours too. But she comes up to prison and sees me and I said, Mom, I just know in my heart I've turned my life over to Christ.
Come on. Praise God.
And I know there's a purpose for this.
Yes, sir.
She looked at me and said, are you crazy?
Come on.
You're facing life sentences in several counties, Don. How are you ever going to walk away? I said, I don't know. But I'm going to. I don't know. I don't know. But it's a promise in there.
Yes, sir.
He promises that he'll turn things around. And I made a promise back.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure going to let people know. And I'm sure going to love it.
Woo, glory.
And guess what? I have an uncle who was a member out at Cedar Hill Baptist Church. Had been there for 15 or 20 years. He's telling my mom, Don, he's telling my mom, look, God might forgive him, but the people here on earth ain't. They're not forgiving. Now, he's someone that's been in church for 20 years.
Here it comes.
Finally, my time's done, but before I can go, I got to go to all these trials. So when I'm out of prison, I'm taken to one county jail and put there. They're setting me for trial. All of a sudden, I don't know if you guys know any criminal defense attorneys, but Scott Rosenblum, Brad Kessler. Okay, I used to work for him too. Yeah. Well, Brad Kessler's the one that did this trick. All of a sudden, he comes in. Through hearing about him through someone and hearing about this, here comes this top-notch, prominent criminal trial lawyer. Takes my case. We go in front of a jury. After 4 days, I'm acquitted of everything. 12 counts.
Glory
All Class A
God.
felonies.
Glory to God.
No one could believe it.
Glory to God.
My uncle, I told Mom, I said, now will you believe?
There's the Jesus.
Now will you believe?
There you go.
My uncle said, you've taught me a lesson about God.
Whoa, glory.
He said, I cannot believe this. He said, you did not even get hit with trespassing. Trespassing.
Glory to my God.
Then I went to St. Louis County and their whole case fell apart, so they dropped it all.
There you go.
There's the other life sentences.
There's Jesus.
There's a glory.
Then I walk away. Now remember the dream I told you about that I had when I was in the hole?
Yeah.
Isn't this ironic? I get a call after I'm out and I'm all over the news and everything else for beating these life sentences. I get a call from Brad Kessler and Scott Rosenblum. He says, will you do us a favor? Because they both worked on the case, but Brad tried it. He said, will you do us a favor? I said, how can I say no? You guys were instrumental in saving my life. We run an organization called R.E.A.C.T, Lawyers Action Group Against Substance Abuse. We speak to high schools and colleges.
Praise God.
And I quit it all, believe me. They said, we'd like to use where you've come from, what you've done, where you've been, and what you're doing now
Yeah.
to teach these kids a lesson.
Come on.
Isn't that something? Remember the dream I had? All of a sudden there was a phone call asking me to do it. Will you speak to people for R.E.A.C.T? I have to. Sure, you guys. So I spoke to 7 high schools around the St. Louis area for them. And it went over so big, I started doing a radio talk show for KLOU 103 FM. The papers wrote about it. And then we kind of butted heads one day because they said, I was putting Christ into it. You know, the whole story is not complete unless you can tell them why it happened.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Praise God.
Testify to his love, yes.
They didn't want me preaching Christ to schools. I said, I'll tell them everything I've done and what's wrong and what's right and everything else. But I'm also going to tell them why I'm here.
Come on.
You know, you got to let me do that.
Come on.
Well, it's just a good thing to keep them out. I said, okay, then maybe I should be out. Because you got to let me put that in there.
Yeah, can you deny it?
And then they called me one day and said, you know what? All the schools that you spoke at with us are interested in having us back next year. We've been doing this for years, but they're not interested in having us back next year unless you're a speaker in the program. No kidding. Then let me put the real story out there to them.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I created an organization called R.E.A.C.T America.
There you go.
Real Events is Classroom Teaching, where I speak to high schools, colleges, universities, and wait till you see my endorsements. Jeff's got them. He's my program director. But in this instance, and the reason that I created this, I did it myself. I said, and I told Jeff, I got to get out there and give my testimony to believers to let them know it's really, really real. He's really real. So in this instance, it's Real Events as Christian testimony. That's the real reason. That's the real reason I'm here, alive, free, and sober today.
Glory.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you.
All of you, please get a hold of me. I would love to work with your youth.
Awesome.
I'd love, like you said, to make these connections. I like what you said sitting up here. I love it. You're right. There's ministers from every walk that has something to offer here. And by coming together, look at the strength it provides. Look at the different testimonies and the different things we can do for each other.
Thanks, man.
Tell me the Spirit of the Lord is not here. Thank you, guys.
Glory.
Thank you, guys.
Hallelujah. Thank you. Yeah.
I don't want you to get away before I talk to you because I'm going after the high school. You refreshed a prophecy.
I know.
I'm going after the high school.
And looked at each other and I said, wow.
I'm going after the high school and I need you to help me.
Yeah.
Not a problem. Go to my website if you want. It's reactamerica.com.
I got brochures.
He's got brochures there on the program. Okay, you guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Come on, bro.